In conversation with Marcha Fox, Marcha Fox wanted to be an author since she was old enough to hold a book. Being drawn to science fiction, she wanted her stories to be accurate, so she went back to school at 35 to earn a Bachelor of Science degree in physics from Utah State University in 1987, which was further enhanced by a 20-year plus career in NASA Johnson Space Center in Austin, Texas. She's the author of the Star Trails Tetralogy, a family-friendly science fiction series designed for anyone with an interest in science. Her most recent work is entirely different, a cross-cultural conspiracy thriller co-authored with Northern Cheyenne, Pete Risingsun, a multi-award-winning case of Dead Horse Canyon Trilogy. Born in New York Hudson Valley, she now resides in the state Finger Lakes region after living in California, Utah, and Texas during the course of raising her family. Much to the horror of her physics professor, she is a professional astrologer with worldwide clientele and has written two books on that subject as well. She's a mother of six who has provided her with a multitude of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, has two spoiled feline for babies, and enjoys gardening. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure, joy and excitement to have on the show today, Marcha Fox. How are you doing, Marcha?
I'm doing wonderful. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited really to have you on the show today. But excited, we're going to be having a lovely conversation around your beautiful titles. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, well, you're very welcome.
Yeah, my pleasure as well. So, Marsha, I need to first say that I am taken aback by your body of literature works, and I would like us to start today's conversation with your The Curse of Dead Horse Canyon, whose description page reads quite compellingly and quite captivating to me. I would like us to start with the obvious questions most authors get asked. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, I started out to write a cozy mystery, and I was basing it on where I lived in Texas at the time. We had a water company that was pretty corrupt, and the water quality was terrible, and people were getting cancer and whatever. So I was going to write a mystery about that, but I couldn't set it in Texas because people
Yeah.
would recognize it. So I decided to move it to Colorado. And when I researched Colorado, I found so much corruption and pollution and all kinds of problems up there that the story just took off. Characters just got a little out of control, but the story was great.
Oh, wow. That sounds like an amazing way, actually, into becoming a writer. Sounds like a lovely introduction into becoming a writer that you've got in there. Thank you for sharing. And how did you come up with the title name, The Curse of Dead Horse Canyon? How does that come to be?
The title just naturally evolved from where it took place and the curse and everything.
That's nice. That's great. Now, for the sake of readers who haven't read the series yet, and without giving much information away, could you tell us about some of the overarching themes from the first series, Cheyenne Spirit, to the second, Grandfather Spirit, and to the third, Sweet Medicine Spirit? I think I've got in one, two, three now. I'd love you to tell us some of the overarching themes in the series.
Okay, for the first book, the overarching theme is largely about the people that influence your life the most, the people who change your life and determine who you are. Two of the most important characters are already dead. And then there's a character that's not even an animate person, it's a bench seat that's loaded with all kinds of secrets waiting to be discovered.
Oh.
So the first book is very dependent on these two people and the bench seat. And then the second book is about consequences of when you do something, even if it's the right thing to do, it can change your life. And also, again, the very thin boundary between the spirit world and the real world. And then the third book is down the rabbit hole, totally the confrontation, with the main theme of the book being government corruption versus a Native American curse from 100 years before. And these two finally clash. And the main character, of course, is the one seeing all this happen.
That's amazing to know, really. That's quite beautiful. And I'd like you to show the books to the camera before we proceed from The Curse of Death Horse Canyon, Grandfather Spirit, and the others.
Okay, here, that's
Beautiful
the
cover.
first
Oh,
one.
that's an amazing award it has won in the imbibed in the cover.
Yeah, that's the first one.
Wow.
And this is the second one.
Oh, wow.
And then the one that just came out and finished up the story is this one.
Oh, this is quite beautiful. It looks quite different from the first and second. The first and second kind of have a similar concept with the cover design.
Yeah, and those are the main character, Charlie, on those two. And then the third cover is of the Sacred Mountain,
Oh,
which is very important to their culture. And he conducts a 4-day fast on the Sacred Mountain
wow.
and is told all the things he needs to do to fulfill his destiny. So it's very important. And Pete, my co-author, really wanted the Sacred Mountain on that. And it's really very important. It's the core of the story.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, I wanted to also ask you, what makes your story unique? How did you connect with your co-author and collaborate while living in entirely different states? I think it's a beautiful question, really. The fact that
Yeah.
you both are in different states and you're able to work together, it's quite surprising and quite interesting. I'd like you to talk about that.
Well, not only was he in a different state, he didn't have a computer.
Oh,
He did have a phone. we talked,
really?
yeah, we talked
And
a
that's how that
lot.
works.
We talked on the phone and we texted back and forth. And especially for the last book, I would print out what I had for the manuscript and mail it to him. And then he would call me when he received it and went through it. And if he had any changes, he would tell me, and I would put them in there. And we collaborated through all those books in that manner. And he and I have just mentioned we're amazed that we did it. We feel like it was a story that needed to be told because it is nothing short of a miracle that he and I were able to do that from totally different cultures and with
Wow.
no computer to tie us together.
Wow. That's something quite exceptional how you're able to carry that on. I mean, it's quite unbelievable and quite exciting as well.
Yeah,
Very
we're
exciting.
surprised as much as anybody.
Wow. That's beautiful. And also, I'm not quite sure if you've answered the question about what makes your story unique. I've got both of it intertwined in the first question.
Yeah, it's very unique. One part of it is about just the government corruption and a typical thriller with all of the things going on with that. And then it's juxtaposed against the ancient Cheyenne culture and their many ceremonies and
Oh,
things
wow.
that they were forced to stop doing by the white man. And the reason that they had problems 100 years ago was even the tribes were not united. They were fighting each other, they were turning on each other.
Mm.
And so they needed to learn to all come together and be unified and be true brothers. And then they'd have a chance to defend their culture.
Oh,
And so
wow.
ultimately, they're trying to get their land back, is what they're trying to do.
Wow. That's great. That's amazing. Also, how does the knowledge of astrology fit into the story? I would love your answer to that.
That wasn't planned. It just kind of happened. I'm what you call a pantser, not a plotter. I fly by the seat of my pants, and my characters do the story, and
Mm,
they just take off. And at one point, an astrologer showed up, and that was cool because I'm an astrologer, so I knew what she would do.
mm,
And since the book does have shades of the paranormal and the other side, the spirit world, it fit in beautifully, where
wow.
she could explain things to them and just bring them comfort with some of the things that was going on.
Mm.
And it just fit into that world. It's a world that's very blurred boundary between this life and the next life.
Oh, wow. I must say, I love your answer to that. Quite fascinating. Quite great and quite inspiring as well. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. It's been very, very, very enlightening to write the things that happened
Yeah.
and the things the characters did. And there were things that would come up, and I think that they were probably too extreme. And then I'd run
Wow.
them past Pete, and he'd go, "Oh no, that could happen." And it's
Oh,
like,
wow.
okay.
That's interesting. That's great. And I also find a page of your book, The Dark Side of Eclipse. Do the heavens still issue warning to things to come? To be quite fascinating. And I need to say, you have such a great, beautiful sense with your titles. They are very compelling, they are quite idiomatic, and it's one that we're like, oh, really? That's a beautiful title. Let's see what is in there. Let's pick it up, you know. But I'd like to ask you, would you like to tell us about the making of that as well? The dark side of eclipse. Do the heavens still issue warning to things to come? I love it. I have to say it again.
Well, eclipses are very important. It had meaning, and that has been lost in modern times. But that's one thing astrologers are very aware of.
Mm,
And countries have a horoscope. They have like a birth chart, just like people do.
yeah.
And you can look at the effect the eclipse has on the country. And even visibly, back in 2017, there was a total eclipse that crossed the United States.
Mm,
Then in 2024, another one crossed the United States, and they
wow.
formed an X across the country. And just one of those paths indicated a country divided.
Mm,
And then when it happened again, it was even more dramatic. And anyone who's aware of what's going on in the United States right now, they can see it's in a crisis. And
mm,
that even relates to Pluto, that Pluto has a very slow orbit around. And when it comes back to the position where it was when the country was born in 1776, this happened a few years ago. And Pluto tends to expose corruption and
yeah.
break things down so that they can be reborn. It's kind of a phoenix type of archetype.
Mm,
And so you can see that that's happening. And when you think about countries, most democracies only last about 200, 250 years. And that's about how long it takes Pluto to make
wow.
one circuit and come back to where it started. And that's when a country usually has a crisis. So I
Mm,
wrote that book based on not only those two eclipses, but several in between that indicated the various things that would come along, like COVID, and
mm,
it just indicated from looking at the eclipse
wow.
what was coming. And I thought it was going to be a little 50 pager talking a little bit about eclipses, and it wound up a full length book because so much
Wow.
information came out when I started researching it. It's like, oh my goodness, I need to do this too. It got very interesting, and
Wow.
I finally had to just stop. I could have kept going forever on it.
Well, that's quite beautiful, very amazing, and quite great, I need to say. Oh, that's a beautiful title cover.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know
Very
if you can see the.
beautiful.
It has the eclipse paths on there.
Wow.
You probably can't see them. Maybe there. There you go.
Wow. Oh, I
Yeah,
see. Yeah.
yeah. Those are the
That's
eclipse paths.
beautiful.
I don't know if you've ever seen one, but when I saw the one in 2017, it was creepy. Even though I knew exactly, it's the moon going in front of the sun, I could see why it would have terrified ancient people because it was like God is no longer looking down on you. He is done. And it was a creepy feeling. And then everything that happened since validated that. Ancient
Mm.
people were so much smarter than people give them credit for. They knew what was going on.
Yeah, I love your take on that, really. That's quite beautiful. That's quite compelling as well. I like the incorporation of science and in your writing. Very great, very beautiful, very beautiful. Now, I wanted to ask you because I'm always fascinated by our authors, especially novelists like yourself, which I think you've shown some of your books to the camera initially, and it's very voluminous. So I'm always surprised by how writers sit down and craft long sentences and bring words together in a way that sentence makes paragraph, and paragraph makes pages, and pages make chapters, and chapters come together to make a great novel. And this always leave me thinking, how exactly do they get the ideas to sit down and craft these long sentences over and over and over again? We having 1, 200, 200, 250, 300 pages. Quite good. I think that's quite a talent, really. But now, as far as writing is concerned, I'd like to ask you, how exactly do you get the inspirations and ideas to write these books? Where did they come from?
Some other dimension, I guess. I would get an idea, and the first thing that I do is figure out who are the people in this story.
Yeah,
And once they are identified and come to life with their personalities and their motives,
yeah,
I turn them loose, and then I'm like a scribe, just watching what they do and writing it down. Get into their head, get into their emotions,
yeah.
and I am have many times in my books, both with the science fiction books and with these more recent ones, had no idea how something was going to turn out. No idea. And I just turned the characters loose, and my characters are the ones who create the story. I create the characters, and then their actions and motivations and what they want drives them, and I just watch what they do and incorporate it into the story. Half the
Mm.
time I don't know how something is going to turn out. I'll have a
Wow.
crisis and not know how it's going to get fixed, and the characters always figure it out, and I am surprised. And so the readers are probably also surprised.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love your take on that, really. Sounds to me to be quite great, very great and quite compelling, yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and also before we wrap up, yeah, what kind of advice would you give other writers who are currently struggling with writing and publishing a book? What would you advise people in this category?
Well, the first thing you need is a good story, and
Mm,
writers need to realize their writing is going to evolve. The more you write, the
yeah,
better you get.
yeah,
And some people have said your first novel, you ought to just call it experience and not even try and publish it because it's a learning experience.
yeah,
And that's maybe something that other people can help you decide, because you always love your own work and it's your baby and you don't want to toss it aside. But sometimes that's best.
mm,
Every book you write will be a little better, a little different. You may even want to go back and rewrite the early ones, and you can't do that.
mm,
But once you really get your writing voice going, then the next challenge, of course, is getting it published. And
yeah,
you decide whether you want to try and go with a commercial publisher or
yeah,
publish it yourself. And then, whichever you decide, if you decide to do it yourself, you have a lot to learn. And that's where I was. I
yeah,
didn't have a lot of resources, and I had to do it myself. I had to learn how to make the covers and how to format the inside and how to upload it to the different platforms like
mm,
Amazon and Ingram. After you get it in print and holding it in your hand, then you need to find your readers. Then you
yeah,
have to do your marketing and your promotion so that
absolutely.
people can find you and know it's something that they want to read.
Yeah. Oh wow, I love your take on that, really. Thank you. And yeah, apart from the books we've mentioned so far, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
Well, I'm got a couple ideas. Right now I'm having to get into the marketing phase of the trilogy,
Yeah.
but my muses are calling me back to my science fiction. Do the final wrap up of the Star Trails series is kind of on my plan. And then many years ago, I wrote another science fiction book
Hmm.
that I never published, and I may pull that out again because it won first prize in a state contest. It was a good
Wow.
story. It was about an asteroid hitting the Earth, and they're
Wow.
talking a lot about that these days. So
Oh
maybe it's
wow.
time to pull that one out again.
That's amazing, really. You've got quite a lot ongoing. And please, before we wrap up, I'd like you to show the books again, one after the other, to the camera, just so we can see what it looks like. Why you tell us where they are available on for purchase?
Yeah, they're on Amazon. They're all on Amazon, and I also publish through Ingram so that they are available also online with Barnes and
Yeah.
Noble and all many different online booksellers.
Wow. That's great. That's amazing. Please show them again to the camera one after the other so we can see from the
Okay,
first to the
of the
second to the third, everything. The Curse of Dead Horse Canyon, Revenge of Dead Horse Canyon.
yeah.
Interesting. Beautiful cover. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Marcha Fox books directly on Amazon, on Ingram Spark, on Barnes& Nobles, on our website, and also on other platforms. I also left a link to our social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Marsha, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. I must say this is more than awesome. Very great, quite exciting, awesome and lovely having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well. Thank you.